Hey there, and welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something that really impacts all of us online. Cyber intrusion, hacking.
Yeah, absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're leaning heavily on the sources you gave us, especially drawing from William L. Simon's book, The Art of Intrusion.
Right. So our mission today isn't just, a dry summary.
No, definitely not. We want to really unpack the whole thing, what makes hackers tick, the techniques they actually use, and importantly, the fallout.
The consequences.
Hmm?
All to give you a better handle on cybersecurity, maybe from a slightly different angle.
Exactly. From the perspective of those actually, well, testing the fences.
And honestly, some of the stories in here are pretty wild. It's this mix of deep technical stuff and then just really human behavior.
It really is.
Okay, so let's start there then, the hacker mindset. What really drives someone to, spend all that time trying to break into digital systems? What's the core of it based on the source?
Well, the source makes it pretty clear it's usually not just one single thing.
Yeah.
Curiosity comes up a lot, big time.
Just wanting to know how things work.
Yeah, that impulse. There's a quote that kind of sums it up. I can't stop being curious overnight, but I can take my curiosity and apply it in a way that doesn't hurt people.
Huh. So it's like this innate drive.
Seems to be, for many. And then there's the challenge, the thrill of cracking a puzzle.
Like a game.
Exactly like a game for some. The source mentions one person describing it as going from level to level and challenge to challenge. It's about that achievement, maybe recognition too.
Within that community, yeah.
Right, and that ties into this incredible persistence the source highlights.
Ah, yes, the idea that you just keep trying.
Totally. The belief that if one thing didn't work, I'd just try something else because I knew there was something that would work. There is always something that works.
Wow. That's relentless.
It is. And that mindset is critical for understanding the threat landscape. You can fix hundreds of bugs, but they just need that one thing to work eventually.
A constant pressure. But it's not always just curiosity or the game, is it? The source mentions other drivers, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Financial gain is obviously a huge motivator for a lot of intrusion activity.
Right.
And then you get into things like social justice motivations, activism, even just plain old revenge sometimes.
So a really complex mix of reasons behind it all.
Very complex. No single profile fits everyone.
Okay, now this next part I found really fascinating. It's not always about super complex code breaking, right?
Yeah.
The source says often the easiest way in is people.
Absolutely. That brings us squarely into social engineering, exploiting, well, human nature, psychology, trust.
The weakest link, often.
Often, yeah. And the source defines it really well. It's not about inventing crazy new manipulation tactics.
It's using everyday stuff.
Exactly. Persuasion techniques we all use, building rapport, seeming credible, making someone feel obligated, but, and this is the key, applying them in a manipulative, deceptive, highly unethical manner.
So weaponizing normal interaction to trick someone into giving up access or info. Instead of fighting the firewall, you charm the admin.
Basically, yeah. And the threat isn't just external actors calling in. The source really hammers the point about insiders.
People already on the inside.
Right, someone with legitimate access, enough knowledge. If they're determined, breaching systems can be, relatively speaking, much easier.
And they use that story of William and Danny,
Mm.
the ones who learned hacking in prison. This just, wow.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? Building networks with, smuggled parts, figuring out internet access through phone lines and old ag department computers.
That speaks volumes about that persistence we talked about.
It really does. Applied in the most unlikely place. And it highlights how insider knowledge, however gained, can be potent.
So how do companies fight that? The human element.
Well, the source talks about training, awareness, even using role-playing exercise.
To show people how easily they can be tricked.
Exactly. Make them see the tactics in action, make security protocols feel more real, trying to make people the first line of defense, not the vulnerability.
And it mentions paying attention to small details too, right? Like looking around someone's desk for clues.
Yeah, checking photos, notes, anything personal in a cubicle that might give away a password hint or security question answer. It's about exploiting familiarity.
The human factor is huge.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting focus a bit. Let's talk tech. Because even if you button up the human side, the source shows that systems we think are rock solid can still have major holes.
That's definitely a core theme. The book mentions, for instance, finding vulnerabilities in casino security systems. You'd assume those would be locked down tight.
Totally. And it also mentions banks, financial institutions. potentially having a false sense of security. That's not comforting.
No, it underscores that security is never done. It's constant vigilance. The source gives some great examples of technical weaknesses.
Like the Coca-Cola machine hack.
Yeah, David's story. It seems almost silly, but it proves a point. Even advanced tech can have unexpected flaws. And sometimes, as the source notes, silly pranks can expose serious security flaws.
And the digital gift certificate thing that pointed to bad application security.
Right. It wasn't necessarily some super secret zero-day flaw. Often it's about finding known vulnerabilities that haven't been patched or just, well, sloppy coding.
So how do they find these?
Methodically. The source describes Louis and Brock's approach. Mapping networks using tools like reverse DNS, traceroute.
Digital reconnaissance.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Scoping out the perimeter, looking for any open door.
And they found that weird open port, right? 4065, just open.
Yeah, just sitting there. Which seems crazy, but it drives home another point the source really emphasizes, the danger of neglecting the basics.
Yeah.
Especially default security settings.
Leaving the factory password on.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The author seems genuinely alarmed by how often that happens, just leaving systems wide open because nobody changed the defaults. It's a massive vulnerability.
Like putting up a strong gate, but using 1234 as the code.
Exactly. And then there are stories of sheer technical grind, like Eric spending 2 years just to get source code.
2 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or Robert, using poorly secured systems simply as launchpads for spam campaigns.
It all comes back to that persistence again, doesn't it? There's always something that works, whether it's social or technical.
Precisely. Keep probing, keep trying angles, eventually something gives.
Okay, so they get in. What about the aftermath? The consequences, the ethics?
Yeah.
It seems like a blurry area sometimes.
Very blurry. The source introduces Adrian Lamo's story, which is quite complex, grew up curious, got into computers early.
And started hacking sensitive sites just for fun. Government sites even.
Yeah, according to the source, he definitely became a controversial figure walking that line.
Between like hacking for good and not so good.
Right. The book calls it that fine line between hacking for good and criminal activity. And it notes he did face consequences, 6 months house arrest, restitution.
Actions have consequences.
They do, and the source also talks about younger hackers influenced by someone named Khalid Ibrahim who were also hitting sensitive sites.
But then 9/11 happened.
Yeah, and the source describes that as a kind of harsh realization for them. It apparently shifted their view of hacking from just, a game or fun challenge to something with really serious ethical weight.
A sobering moment.
Definitely. Then we circle back to William and Danny, the prison hackers. Their story doesn't end there.
Right, they got out eventually.
Yeah, and the source talks about their struggles, but also how they use those unconventional skills they learned inside.
The hacking skill.
The hacking and networking skills, yeah. How they use them to build legitimate careers afterwards. It's presented as this powerful example of resilience, maybe redemption.
Showing you can change your path, even with that kind of past, if you put in the effort, as the source says.
It suggests that possibility, yes. And there's another story, Jim's revenge prank at Fort Lewis.
Where he got offered a job after pulling a prank.
Right. Which raises all sorts of ethical questions about valuing talent versus overlooking behavior. The key takeaway there, and generally, is that every action has consequences.
Ethical lines, consequences, potential for change. It's all intertwined.
Very much so.
So, given all these ways in human, technical, persistent attackers, what about defense? How do organizations actually try to protect themselves?
Well, a big part of it discussed in the source is penetration testing, pen testing.
Basically hiring people to try and hack you.
Exactly. Simulating real attacks to find the weaknesses you might have missed yourself.
And it's often former hackers doing these tests, right? Which makes sense.
It does. They know the mindset, the tricks. The source uses the example of Newton, an IT firm, wanting to buy Asomaia, a security group led by this ex-hacker Mudge.
And Omaye proved their value how?
By pen testing Newton, they basically showed Newton, look, here are your vulnerabilities, this is what we can do. It was a pretty effective demonstration.
So setting ground rules for these tests is important. Scope, methods.
Crucial. What's fair game? Just technical, social engineering, physical access attempts. Ideally, the source suggests the test should be aggressive to get a real picture.
And companies often expect a clean bill of health.
Apparently so. The source notes that often companies hope the test confirms their security is great, but the results usually reveal significant weaknesses.
A necessary reality check, maybe.
Probably. So, beyond testing, what are the core defenses the source points to?
The basics.
Yeah, the fundamentals are key. Things like configuring firewalls properly, not just turning them on, regularly updating systems, monitoring who has access to what,
Audit.
periodic audits, yeah, checking user activities, file permissions, strong password policies, obviously, and just overall vigilance, knowing that attackers are persistent.
It feels like a defender's nightmare, though.
It's tough. There's that classic line the source uses. The security systems have to win every time. The attacker only has to win once.
That really sums up the challenge. Okay,
Yeah.
let's connect this back. Why go to all this trouble? We talked motivations, but what's the ultimate prize often? What are attackers really after, according to the source?
The source is very clear on this. For most organizations, the single most valuable asset is their intellectual property.
IP. So not the servers themselves or the money directly, but the ideas. Product designs, R&D, customer lists, that kind of stuff.
Exactly that stuff. The source argues it's more valuable than physical assets because, well, you can steal it without anyone noticing right away.
Unlike wheeling a server rack out the door.
Right. And losing your core IP, your secret sauce, your customer data, can kill a company's future. Rebuilding that is incredibly hard, maybe impossible.
That makes sense why it's such a target.
Definitely. Remember Eric and Robert, the crackers targeting software companies.
Yeah, going after the source code.
Exactly. Stealing the IP to crack the software, let people use it for free, undermine the business model. That's IP theft with direct financial consequences for the victim.
But then you have Louis and Brock again, who found vulnerabilities.
But chose not to exploit them, right? The source says they recognized the potential damage someone else could steal IP using what they found, so they reported it ethically.
To help the company fix the holes. Shows there's a choice there.
Absolutely. It also touches on that idea of suspect security again.
The complacency thing.
Yeah. Companies thinking they're safe, maybe underestimating the value of their IP or the determination of attackers, leaving them vulnerable.
So if we pull back even further, think about the big picture. What's the overall impact of all this hacking activity on society?
Well, the source paints it as sort of a dual role. On the one hand, obviously, hackers cause damage, disruption, financial loss, real harm.
No question.
But kind of ironically, their actions also push cybersecurity forward. Every time a major flaw is exposed, even maliciously.
It forces defenders to get better.
Exactly. It drives innovation, forces companies to update, leads to new security tools and practices. It raises awareness, too.
A strange kind of catalyst.
In a way, yes. And the source gives a really stark example of intrusion's impact on a geopolitical scale. The U.S. military messing with Iraq's communication systems during Desert Storm.
Information warfare.
Precisely. Showing how controlling or disrupting an adversary's digital communications is now a massive part of modern conflict. It's way beyond just stealing credit cards. It's national security, global power dynamics.
Wow, okay. So we've taken quite a journey through the art of intrusion here. We've looked at the hacker mindset, curiosity, challenge, persistence. We've seen the techniques, both technical and very human social engineering.
Yeah, we've covered the consequences, personal, corporate, ethical, and the constant back and forth of defense, pen testing, trying to secure that invaluable intellectual property.
It's a really complex and, frankly, dynamic world. Understanding the human side seems just as vital as the code.
Absolutely critical.
And hopefully digging into this helps you, our listener, make a bit more sense of the digital world we all live in, whether you're thinking about security at work or just, online life in general.
Which actually leads to maybe a final thought to leave you with. We've seen this constant evolution, this arms race between offense and defense. We know technology changes, but human nature, things like trust, curiosity, susceptibility to manipulation, stays pretty constant.
Right.
So in this endless cat and mouse game, where both the technical landscape and the human element are always in play, how does anyone, whether it's you personally or a huge organization or even a country, ever truly stay ahead? How do you maintain effective vigilance against threats that are always shifting, always adapting?
That's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
How do you stay secure in a game that never really ends? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.